Hi and welcome to the Communications Department at FBU Head Office. We're joined once again by the General Secretary, Matt Wrack, and this is a specific issue. Matt, the new Fire Minister, Penny Mordaunt, has announced a review. What exactly does this involve regarding conditions of service?
Yeah, Penny Mordaunt's the new English Fire Minister at DCLG, and she's announced a review of conditions of service for all fire and rescue service staff. She's appointed a guy called Adrian Thomas, who's got a background in personnel, HR and so on, and he's going to lead a review with a team from DCLG supporting him, and that's going to look at a whole range of areas. If you look at the terms of reference, for example, it says that it should look at barriers to flexibility and responsiveness of workforce management practices, staffing and crewing arrangements, looking at barriers to people working longer, and if they desire exceeding their normal pension age, collaboration and integration with other emergency services, the increased use of on-call firefighters, and clarity of process in the fair recruitment and remuneration of chief fire officers and fire officers. So there's quite a broad range of issues that the review is going to look at, and it's starting pretty quickly already. The survey's out. I think Adrian Thomas then comes into work full-time shortly. Presumably he starts the work and will be meeting with different people, I presume including ourselves, fire service employers and others.
So it's a wide-ranging review, but how are terms and conditions for firefighters agreed now?
Yeah, I think it's an important point, and that members understand. Firefighters work for fire and rescue services. Those fire and rescue services in most places are accountable to fire authorities. Slightly different in Northern Ireland and in Scotland now, where we've got a single fire and rescue service covering Scotland. But the important point is we don't work for central government. Firefighters work for fire and rescue authorities, so our employers are those fire and rescue service employers. How we determine pay and conditions is through collective bargaining, i.e. employers and employees sit down together, often don't agree but sometimes agree, pay and issues, and so on, and we do that through what's called the National Joint Council for Local Authority Fire and Rescue Services, and that is a body that covers the whole of the UK, so it's pretty unique. It covers England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, so that firefighters across the UK are broadly working on similar terms and conditions, the same base terms and conditions, national rate of pay, national rates of overtime. There are variations on some other issues, but some of those core issues are determined nationally through the National Joint Council, and there's clear reasons for that. We have firefighters crossing borders every day of the week, and so the idea that they'd be on different rates of pay really makes no sense in terms of the service as well as for us as a union. So I think what sets a little bit of alarm bells ringing. We don't work for central government, and yet central government has now announced a review into our conditions of service without consulting employees and without consulting employers in the fire service.
But now this review has been announced, what's the union's position on it?
Well, the Executive Council has started to discuss it, and I think we need to be very clear to members that we see it as a big threat. Our pay, and we don't always get our own way, as I'm sure members have seen. We've had pay freezes, we've had low pay rises, members' living standards have fallen as a result of that. But what we haven't had is a whole-scale destruction of our conditions of service. Our conditions of service are set out in the Grey Book, they're set out in circulars that are agreed jointly and issued by the National Joint Council. Those become contractual rights that members have, and the idea that someone should come in and review that, well, first of all, without even talking to employers about whether that's necessary, without talking to employees about whether that's necessary, that's quite worrying, because we've seen previous examples when so-called independent reviews have come in and fundamentally changed how the fire service is organised, again without agreement. We've seen it in other industries where people have come in with no knowledge of the industry at all, and without taking account of what really goes on the ground, again altered things fundamentally, often making mistakes. So the Executive Council needs to alert members that there's a big threat to how our pay and conditions are determined, and in turn to our pay and conditions themselves further down the line.
And as part of all this, the government has sent out actually a number of surveys, but a survey direct to firefighters. What's the advice from the union regarding this?
Well, we looked at the survey that was sent out, and there's some things that catch your attention straight away. When the union does surveys, we approach an external organisation. We go normally to YouGov, which is a recognised polling organisation. We discuss the issues we want to find out information about. They are very clear sometimes, you can't ask that question, it's too biased and so on. So they set parameters of what you can and can't ask and how you do it. They conduct the survey, it's independently verified, so it has some validity. What's happened here is a government department, on the advice of Mr. Thomas, have drawn up a survey, issued it out willy-nilly. There's no control, there's been no discussion about the contents of it. The questions, we think, are very leading and one-sided. They strike us as designed to get a certain result by the survey. We have no control over it. Members of fire services, that's our members, firefighters who decide to respond to it, will have no control over how how the information is drawn together, collated, summarised and so on. So again, there's huge risks in responding to that. So the Executive Council, we don't like boycotting things, but the Executive Council last week discussed that and concluded we couldn't give people advice on how to answer particular questions because they were so one-sided in some cases, and therefore the only safe thing to say to people is we advise people not to cooperate with that survey. What we may do is conduct our own surveys of firefighters about the real issues that they're concerned around terms and conditions. It raises questions about bullying. There might be questions about management structures and management techniques and how people feel they're treated in the fire and rescue service. I think those are valid questions to ask. But certainly Mr. Thomas's survey, we are strongly advising members not to cooperate and complete that survey.
So just to be absolutely clear, we're saying to firefighters, to FBU members, do not take part in this survey.
That's our advice. It's not safe, there's lots of risks in it, and therefore we advise people not to cooperate with it and not to complete that survey.
Thanks very much, Matt. Some very clear advice there from the union to its members. Please keep up to date with all the news on our website, which is www.fbu.org.uk, or follow us on Twitter, which is @FBU National. Thanks very much. Thanks, Matt.